Hello and welcome to Computer Tech and More. Today we're going to be taking a look at the TL-G12, the king of value proposition, as well as an ID cooling Pastel series fans. So this is part of my redone series where I redid all the noise testing analysis for all of my fans with a new noise testing analysis. Let's get right into it. So the difference between my new and the old testing methodology is basically comes down to overall accuracy and testing methodology. So previously I placed the microphone close to the fan, which is which gives you a sound profile very similar to that you would get with a mesh filter, or placing the fan up against a fin stack, so heatsink or radiator fin stack in a pull configuration where the fin blades are close to the fins of the cooling device, thus creating extra noise interference of the blades interacting with another object, whether it's the cooler or the mesh filter, thus amplifying the noise further. So the testing itself isn't inherently wrong, it's just not doing what I want it to do. So now it's at a fixed measured distance with as much sound isolation as I can get. And that's what we're going to be using going forward. And then I also upgraded the overall accuracy. So previously I just kind of placed the microphone as close as I could to the fan, which is why we got the type of testing we did. But that also helped to cancel out the room noise. So that means I did test it kind of whenever. I wasn't paying as close attention to the original room noise level because I thought I could just subtract it out and it would be okay. I'm not a noise engineer. I'm an aerospace engineer. But I figured after doing enough testing, I discovered that my overall accuracy was plus or minus 4 decibels, which is an 8 decibel range. Every 10 decibels is a doubling in noise volume. So that is too big a range. Using my new testing methodology, I am accurate to within plus or minus 2 decibels. And that is a 4 decibel range. That is a little bit more acceptable. I would like to get that more fine-tuned, but unfortunately to get there, I would need help from viewers like you and or a type of sponsorship to get me to that level to basically fund the next step, because if I'm going to redo the noise analysis, I want to redo everything. I want to get a dedicated machine for my testing. I want to add in longevity testing to my fans. Buying more fans, I want to build a little noise isolating or dampening type chamber. It's not going to be isolating, but dampening type chamber. Getting a more accurate microphone. One is specialized in picking up noise levels, as opposed to the one you just hear me record my voice on right now. I want to get rebuild my testing chamber for case simulation tests to something with a bit more sturdy materials, to better simulate an actual computer case, as well as making an alternative size one. I want to completely upgrade my CFM testing to be overall more accurate, and I want to get a more accurate anemometer. Something that is accurate within plus or minus 0.01 meter per second, as opposed to one that is accurate within 0.1 meters per second, just for better fine-tuning granularity between these fans to actually, rank them as they should be. Now onto the testing of this video that we're actually going to be talking about. So we have the original testing methodology with the new testing methodology, the rank of the fan, the model of the fan, the RPM, and the airspeed performance. On 100% PWM fan signaling, we have one additional column, and that is the noise level. Let's get right. All right, first up is noise normalized airspeed through my CPU AirCooler. Oh, I should mention that if you're new to this channel, I do recommend you watch the later part of this video, where I actually discuss what each of the tests are, why they're important, as well as all the applicable information with regard to that there. If you're returning to this channel, you can go ahead and watch this section, as it's just a rough overview of what has changed versus the new testing methodology. Now let's get into it. So in noise normalized through the CPU AirCooler, as I stated, the TL-G12 was originally ranked 44 out of the 120 millimeter class fans. It is now ranked 21, so an overall great improvement uplift. So it's actually operating quieter than I first predicted. And the Pastel was ranked 25th, and it hasn't changed position at all. In terms of the 100% PWM fan signaling, the TL-G12 retains its position at 41, while the Pastel retains its position at 22. Value proposition through the CPU AirCooler at noise normalized values of 12 decibels by my readings. The TL-G12 was ranked 7th. It is now ranked 1st. What? So there's that. And the Pastel was ranked 8th and is now ranked 7th. In a cooler value proposition, 100% PWM fan-signaling, the TL-G12 was ranked 2nd and retained that position, while the Pastel was ranked 10th and retains that position. For CFM testing, noise normalized, the TL-G12 was ranked 40 and is now ranked 22nd, so that is a great improvement in position right there. The Pastel was ranked 16th and is now ranked 18th, so it lost a little bit of ground compared to other fans. At 100% PWM fan signaling, the TL-G12 is ranked 40th overall. The Pastel is ranked 12th. CFM value proposition, the TL-G12 was ranked 2nd and is now ranked 1st. The Pastel was ranked 6th and retains that position. At 100% PWM fan signaling value proposition, the TL-G12 is ranked 2nd and the Pastel is ranked 6th. Case simulation test, 6-inch mark, noise normalized. The TL-G12 was ranked 35th. It is now ranked 9th. So that is a great improvement in position, and you do see an uptick in its airspeed. The Pastel was ranked 33rd. It is now ranked 36th, so its overall lost position. 11-inch mark, noise normalized, case simulation test. The TL-G12 was ranked 29th. It is now ranked 12th. The Pastel was ranked 37th and is now ranked 38th, so it lost a little bit of ground there. 6-inch mark, value proposition, noise normalized, case simulation test. The TL-G12 was ranked 1st and it retains that position. However, it improves its first position, basically. The Pastel was ranked 17th. It is now ranked 12th. 11-inch mark, noise normalized, value proposition. The TL-G12 retains its position in first place, just making its first place position even bigger, larger. The Pastel went from rank position 30th to 23rd. And now we're going to go into the specific tests. So first up in the specific tests is the case simulation test. The case simulation test can be used in a couple of key ways. The first one is, what size case do you actually plan on buying? Because that really in the end is the most important piece of information. The rest is scientific. So if you're buying a small form factor case, that is a front to back airflow. And I want to iterate that, front to back, not the ultra compact ones that suck in air from the sides and suck it out the top, or blow it out the top, suck in air from the bottom, blow it through the top. That kind of case design, this isn't applicable for. Those type of cases actually need high pressure type fans to get through all the nooks and crannies to cool all the components around it. So you actually want to look at how the fan does in heatsink testing and CFM testing. Those are a little bit more pressure cases than this is, and will indicate which fan is actually the most useful or best for that type of case. But for the 6-inch mark, again, it's a front to back airflow. And, I should mention, these measurements, so the 6, the 9, the 11, and the 14.5-inch marks, are representative of where the CPU socket, i.e. the air cooler, is positioned inside of a case of each applicable size. So small form factor, compact tower, mid tower, and large cases. So you do want the max amount of airspeed hitting the fan of the CPU cooling fan for the applicable size case, and I'm going to get into that in a second, or into that in more detail in a second. So the 6-inch mark is also representative for a short throw distance. So if you want to cool your GPU, you're going to put fans on the bottom of your case, right? So that's going to be blowing air up into your GPU. So that is a short throw distance representative of that 6-inch mark. So the 9-inch mark, again, is a compact tower representative of probably a Dell Optiplex or other business type class computers, or what I most think of when I think of that size case. Mind, there's certainly ones that buy it on the market. It should be able to fit an ATX length case, so an MATX would also fit. But the difference there would be that the GPU can't be very long, so it would be effectively the length of the motherboard. So that would be that 9-inch mark. The 11-inch mark would be your standard mid-tower cases, something like the Corsair 500 series, like the 550D, for example, or like the Meshify 2C, whatever the fractal mid-tower cases are. And then the large cases would be, or the 14.5-inch mark would be whatever large cases are. So like the Fractal Design Torrent, and other ones like that. This doesn't take into account cases that blow air in from the sides. So like the lian-li 011 dynamic. Because the air has to turn, it isn't recommended really for an air cooler in that style case. So you still want good airflow, but the data isn't as applicable for that. So, but I wouldn't use that type of case for air cooling anyways. Now, as I previously mentioned, you want to have maximum airspeed going into your CPU cooler. And the reason for that is actually very simple. So your computer fans are basically pulling air into them. So they're pulling a vacuum in front of it. And then they're pushing, if they're up against a heatsink or a radiator, then they're having to push the air through it. So if there isn't air being fed into it, it's literally pulling a vacuum in front of the fan that is filling, and then the air is filling in that void to then be sucked in. So the fan is both having to suck and push. So I can't think of a better way to describe that off the top of my head right now. But if you've got a fan up here in the front and it's force feeding the air, so it's blowing it down the case, the air is going to be force fed into the fan, or it's going to be filling in the gap where the air is being sucked into it. And then it's just, the fan just has to accelerate the air through it rather than pulling and pushing. It just makes the overall airflow more streamlined and more efficient, thus improving cooler temperatures for your CPU cooler or radiator. Now, this testing is most applicable for a air cooler inside of your standard PC case. However, airflow patterns do matter. So if you have a radiator and it's in front of the fan, so the fans are in a pull configuration on a radiator, so this would be at the front of your case, the air coming out the back of these fans will be the original flow pattern that you would see in these graphs. That doesn't change. If the fan is in a push configuration, it's blowing air through a radiator, the radiator actually helps to straighten out the airflow, so the air would actually be coming out in a very streamlined, smooth fashion, much more linear and flat, relatively speaking, than before, because the radiator actually acts as a flow straightener. So airflow pattern does matter. And if you're hooking up to a radiator and it's in a push configuration, so the fan is in front, the radiator is in the back, having a wide flow pattern doesn't necessarily matter as much. However, I'm of the opinion that the fans that can blow in as a tight a cone as possible are going to be overall the most efficient at blowing air through your cooler. And then if you want to swap fans around, you change your build, whatever in the future, the fan is versatile enough that you can put it as a case fan. So that way you can just buy one fan and be one and done. So that is just my general opinion on the matter. And the reason that the airflow coming out of the fan does matter, so let's say you have this wide cone, it means that the airflow will slow down much more quickly, which is what we can see over here. If the airflow pattern is really wide, it slows down more quickly and drops down. While if it maintains a flatter type line, it'll maintain a higher airspeed. So that is that cone shape. A more tightly packed cone, or dense cone, just will have less opportunity to slow down. So that's why I bring it up. Your internal case temperatures won't vary that much, honestly, especially if you've got good exhaust going. I have a Fractal Design Torrent, so I don't actually have an exit fan on it, so I do need good airflow going through it. But if you've got good exhaust going through your case, it doesn't quite matter as much for temperatures of like motherboards. But temperature of your heating devices, so i.e. the CPU and the GPU will be affected quite heavily by the overall quality of airflow going through your case, and it's particularly more important for air coolers. For radiators, it doesn't quite matter as much because it can just pull the air out wherever you need it to go. Anyway, so let's dive into this. We got the TL-G12 on the left side, we got the Pastel on the right side, and these are their flow patterns at 20, 40, 60, and 100% PWM fan sealing. But this, I mean, we can directly look at them against each other for the different RPMs, but it's only air RPM versus airspeed at an associated distance. How do things look noise normalized? Well, here we are. I have a control fan, and it's this aqua teal colored one, not quite aqua, teal colored one, and it is based 3 parts A12X drive to 1 part A14, creating my own little composite fan that I figure gives the best of both worlds of between 120s and 140s to better directly compare the two different size fans all on one combined graph. So we can see that the TL-G12 matches my control fan fairly closely, and then it begins to fade away as we get to bigger cases. So the TL-G12 is definitely an excellent pick for a smaller case. And it's an okay pick for a bigger case in terms of its overall air speed. The Pastel, on the other hand, is a pretty poor performer overall in all regards. How about at 100% PW fan signaling? Well, let's take a look at the Pastel first, because it's not good. So let's just leave it at that. How about the TL-G12? Well, it's pretty darn close to my control fan. So it's actually a pretty good performer despite its more of a pressure designed blade design. So good job. Now, how do they compare against other fans? So right here, this grouping, ending at this yellow line, is what I consider to be good fans. And you might be saying, well, this yellow line is pretty far away from the other ones. Well, this yellow line belongs to the Wonder Snail. And if you look across its entire sweep of distances, it starts off low and ends up squarely in the middle of my other good fans. So at longer distances, the Wonder Snail is actually quite excellent, which is why I decided to put it at the bottom end of my good fan category. And then we have other top-end fans, and you can see how each fan model have different airflow patterns and how they drop off air speed. So the TL-G12 actually is squarely in the middle of the good fans, drops a little bit on the quick side compared to other ones, and ends up sort of on the bad side of the good fans, but it's overall not a terrible result. It's well above my worst fan, while the Pastel is where I'd call the bad category, and we're going to just leave it at that. At 100% PW fan signaling, how are things looking? Well, the TL-G12 is sitting towards the bottom end of my good fans. So it's not a bad result, but there are just other fans that perform better than it. And we'll get into the price of the fan in the later part of this video. This is all pure performance. The Pastel starts off actually okay, but it's not able to concentrate its airflow, and it spreads out and slows down and becomes not very good overall. Now, I want to do a quick explanation of this 9-inch mark, because this is the airspeed versus decibel at the 9-inch mark. So I could choose to do decimal reading versus airspeed at any of these data points, and actually any and all of them. But the problem is that once I reach airspeeds below 0.5 meter per second, my readings get less consistent. It is much more of an estimation. It's just the accuracy of the anemometer, which is why I like to upgrade it. And so thank you to my patrons for supporting this channel, and hopefully I'll be able to acquire better test equipment sooner than later. But the 9-inch mark was chosen because fans that tend to drop off quickly tend to still have enough airspeed at the 9-inch mark to give me good consistent readings, as opposed to the 11 or 14.5-inch mark. And the 6-inch mark is so close to the front of the case that there isn't as much differentiation between the fans. So that's why the 9-inch mark was chosen. So right here we have the Pastel sitting at the absolute terrible level fans. The only difference is that it has higher airspeed than my worst one. It's also noisier by a lot. Meanwhile, the TL-G12 is actually sitting right towards the top of my good fans. And if you're wondering what this little joggle is, that's where I hit a harmonic frequency within the fan itself, where it becomes particularly noisy for a little bit, and then when you get past that RPM, it drops back in noise, and then it continues to climb. So I don't know if that harmonic is in the fan acting in my testing apparatus or whatnot, but that is where I hit a harmonic, and it was very consistent in all my testing. Well, the TL-G12 starts off really well, and then it kind of drops back, so it's not quite as efficient at higher RPMs as it is at lower RPMs. All right, let's move on to the next test. TL-G12. Now we're on to airspeed through my CPU air cooled. My cooler is the Noctua U12A. Both these graphs, the better fans are going to be sitting top left, worse fans are going to be sitting bottom right. Let's start on the left side. The left side is RPM versus airspeed. This is a blade efficiency graph. It is how good is this particular blade design at pushing air through a heatsink. It's just as simple as that. And we can see that the TL-G12 is outperforming my control fan by a actually pretty significant margin before it hits its maximum RPM, where my control fan does exceed it. The Pastel, on the other hand, creates a very similar result to my control fan, and at higher RPMs it does surpass it. Now, the right graph. This is noise versus airspeed. This is a noise efficiency graph. So how much noise does it produce for a given RPM or given air speed? Well, we can see the TL-G12 is more or less sitting close to the line of my control fan. Of course, we got the little joggle where we have a harmonic, and then it climbs again. But it's sitting a little bit off my control fan, but it's not a terrible result. While the Pastel starts off actually okay at its minimum RPM, but then quickly goes foobar as it makes a lot of noise. Now this is a lot of data, and I'll do a little bit of explanation first, but this is noise normalized to my CPU air cooler and a bunch of applicable fans done in testing. It's not all of them. So over here on the right side, we have a number. So let's say 190 watts equals 1.3. So I did a video testing my CPU air cooler for what wattage it would draw with one fan, maximum airspeed going through it. I measured the airspeed, maximum PWM fan signal, let the wattage stabilize, and took down a reading. Then I dropped the PWM fan signal to the next notch down, got the airspeed measurement, let the wattage stabilize again, took that number down, and did in so forth, pseudo and so forth until I hit 20% PWM fan signaling. So I was able to generate an airspeed to wattage ratio. So this is for my specific CPU, the i7-11700K, and for my specific cooler, the U12A. If you have a different CPU than me, these wattages may not line up exactly. I haven't done a lot of CPU testing or CPU and cooler testing to know how different CPUs respond on this particular cooler if the wattages line up exactly the same way, but I imagine that they don't. So then you might be wondering, well, then how do you use this data? Well, you can use it as a comparison standpoint. So let's say you have the Noctua F12. At my given noise level, noise normalized value of 12 decibels, it's moving 0.5 meters per second of air. If you upgrade to the TL-G12, you're going to be moving 1.1 meter per second of air. And if you go even further, you're going to be moving higher air speeds. Now, how much extra wattage improvement you're going to get, I can't say for certain. But if your CPU is unlocked or overclocked, you're going to be able to draw a higher thermal load, so wattage, for that given noise value. If your CPU is locked, so a non-K series, non-X series, and you haven't tried overclocking it at all, your CPU is going to run cooler for that given wattage. Or you can take this extra overhead, pull back the PWM fan signal a little bit, and your system runs even quieter. That's how you can use this data. So the TL-G12, I would say, is fit pretty much squarely in the middle. Certainly a good spot to be in. It is with other top contending fans, such as the Sunwings 4 Pro 120, the NFS12A. Well, that's interesting. The Tough Fan 12 is a little bit higher than it, but it's overall in a good position. The Pastel is actually not that bad yet. It's looking okay. But how about at 100% PWM fan signaling? Well, on here we have the name of the fan, the RPM, and the noise level. This is actually where it falls apart for the Pastel. So it does technically outperform the G12, but it's also at 25.8 decibels. So for context, The Storm 120 is 23.6. What has similar airspeed to that? The Bionics P120 is at 20.4, so that is a solid 5 decibels less noise for the same airspeed. Or for a relatively similar noise level, so it's technically with just outside my error, the P12 Max is 27.9, and it's moving 3.1 meters per second of air. So you get my point. The Pastel is not very noise efficient for its RPM, for its airspeed. The TL-G12 is operating at a noise level of 19.2 decibels. It is sitting at the lower side of the graphs. It doesn't have the highest airflow because of its limited RPM range, but it is certainly not too noisy for the amount of air it's pushing. Mind, there are other fans that are more noise efficient, like the A12X25 for the pretty much the exact same noise level. It is moving quite a bit more air. So you have to pick and choose what is most important to you in every type of criteria. Next up, we have airspeed through my CPU AirCooler versus noise level. And the Pastel, we can see how it lines up. So it clearly is on the noisy side. It's not terrible, but you can see why certain fans do kind of outperform it, where other ones start off at pretty much low airspeed and then quickly climb up, while the Pastel tends to have kind of a flatter line. And the G12 actually is doing pretty well overall. It just doesn't have the kind of high-end RPM that other fans have. And all the fans on this graph I would consider to be good fans or pretty good fans, which is why they're all listed here. Next up is the CFM testing. So CFM is my least favorite test, mostly because of other reviewers ruining how it's used. So first, how is CFM calculated? So CFM is cubic feet per minute. So you've got a tube, you've got a fan, you know the surface area of the tube. So let's say you're measuring it in feet. So that's pi r squared, so that's feet squared times pi. You know the air speed, let's put that in feet per minute. So then feet per minute times feet squared is feet cubed per minute, or cubic feet per minute. And you can use any units that you want, as long as one is a distance and one is in essentially an airspeed, so meters per second, miles per hour, whatever you want them to be. But the reason I don't like this test, now that we've explained what it is that fundamentally you put a fan on a tube, the tube is the same size as the fan, so if a fan has a tendency to spew air off to the sides, there is no room for that air to go off to the sides. So that means all the air travels down the tube anyways. So thus a fan that has the two fans will appear closer in performance than they actually are. Mind, in general, you would end up with the correct result, but you're ending up there for the wrong reasons, which does matter. The two fans are going to look closer in performance than they actually are, which is why that case simulation test is so important. It actually shows how rapidly some of these fans can drop off in performance. So how can this testing actually be used? Well, if you want to make your own at-home wind tunnel, this is what you do. If you want to check airspeed through your CPU AirCooler or radiator, you can use CFM testing. You don't even need the tube. You can just take your anemometer, you know the surface area of your radiator heatsink, and you can generate that value. You can use CFM testing to calculate your total volumetric flow rate through your entire case. So how much air is being cycled through it per minute, per second, whatever unit you want to use. You can use it in, I'm forgetting right now. It'll come to me later probably. But it's basically a scientific test. Oh, for scientific testing. That's what it was. I reminded myself. So you could have your tube, you have a couple pressure meters, you have a little blockage in there with a measurement size slit, or maybe a valve, so you could adjust the opening size, and you blow the air in it, and you can measure how much static pressure the fan generates. You measure the airspeed going through it. You're able to get the dynamic pressure, the static pressure, and so you're able to relate airspeed versus pressure generation and get those nice pretty curves that Noctua likes to show off, and actually other fan manufacturers do. But this data is very scientific. It's great at showing how a fan does in different pressure scenarios, but not how it is at case airflow, again leading back to my testing. So now that I've finished ranting and raving, how do they look? Well, case and point, they line up near on perfect with my control fan. For the blade efficiency, how about noise efficiency? At least this is a differentiator because every fan model is different and how much noise they generate is different as well. And both these two fans are noisier than my control. Let's move on. So here we are, noise normalized testing, CFM. The Pastel is a little bit above the TL-G12, but both of them sort of in the middle of the pack. At 100% PWM fan signaling, the Pastel has differentiated itself, moving a bit further up the stack, but actually it's doing pretty well overall. It's a little bit behind the EK Loop, which is what I consider a good fan, and it is remarkably outperforming the A12X25. But at what cost? More noise. So you got to decide what is most important to you. The TL-G12, on the other hand, is sitting right at the bottom, not at the very bottom, but towards the bottom, but it's overall not a bad result, especially considering its limited RPM range. Now we're on to CFM versus decibel rating. We got the Pastel right here, kind of the bottom end of the good fans, somehow. And we got the G12 sitting right here at the bottom end of the good fans as well. Okay, let's move on. This is the ID Cooling fan. It's the ZF-12025, just for note-keeping sake. And this is the way its LEDs look. This fan is not RGB. It gets its color purely from this cable, which was out of focus, but doesn't really matter. So it's drawing a little bit of extra power to power the lights, but it gives it a nice bright white look. I chose pink for my review sample. It comes in several other colors. We'll talk about that as we already talked about. So it does illuminate the blades a little bit, but they are pink as well. It's got a nice little bit of a ring around the outside. That also looks pretty spiffy. From the back, it looks like a bog standard fan. So nothing special about looking at it from the back. The LEDs are really designed to be looked at from the sides, all the sides, or the front. So just so you know what you're getting into, let's move on to the next section. Now we're on to value proposition. The Pastel is a $13 fan and the TL-G12 is a $7 fan. And this is based off of standard retail pricing that I could find off of Amazon. So as fans go on sale, the value proposition does change. So I encourage you to, well, double check the data for your particular time of buying as opposed to just my standard retail price. That otherwise it would be too much influx and would be making videos like every other day. Anyways, so on all these graphs, we're going to have the noise normalized on the left side and the 100% PWM fan signaling on the right side. And who are these graphs most specifically for? Well, if you're on an ultra tight budget, value proposition matters the most because you're trying to squeeze every penny out of your build. Now, if you have a little bit of extra budget to work with, I would recommend comparing this data, so the value proposition, to the actual performance graphs to determine which fan best suits your particular needs for your budget. Whether that's performance characteristic, whether that's RGB, whether that's noise level. You pick the criteria that is most important to you to fit your budget for the value criteria that you're after. So the king of value is the TL-G12 for my testing right now. It is just the cheapest, best performing fan, bar none. And case in point, the 6-inch test, even at 100% PWM fan signaling, where we saw it kind of drop back because of its limited RPM, it is still ranked the best. How about at 11%, or not 11%, how about the 11-inch mark? It is still the top performer. It is the king of value. And I'm going to just keep saying it. At 100% PWM fan signaling, it is barely beaten out by the P12 Max. But at noise normalized values, it crushes the P12 Max. So you need to choose what's most important. If you are running your case fans at 100% PWM fan signaling, something has gone terribly wrong inside your case. So take that for what you will. So I would focus most on the noise normalized value personally, but it's all up to you. How about how is it doing to the CPU air cooler? Well, it crushed everybody else. It is ranked right at the top at 100%. The only fan that really beats it is the P12 Max, which again, so do you need higher performance or do you not need the maximum performance? And so you can get better noise normalized value. So again, where is it most important to you? And 100% doesn't take into account noise levels. If you would like to see me incorporate that in the future, please leave that in the comment sections down below. It would involve me making an extra graph, brand new, but I could do it if there's interest in it. CFM testing, noise normalized. The Pastel is, I haven't even been talking about the Pastel because it's been so like middle of the road. The Pastel at the 6-inch mark is pretty middle. At 100%, it's doing a little bit better than middle. At the 11-inch mark, it's below mid. At 100%, it's below mid. And now we're onto the CPU cooler. Sorry, I completely missed. No, did I talk about the CPU cooler? I don't remember. The TL-G12 is king. Yes, I did. The Pastel is actually doing pretty well, noise normalized. And at 100%, it's still doing pretty well. Upper mids. Maybe even upper. Okay, CFM testing. Now that I had to finish backtracking a little bit to talk about the Pastel, I do apologize for that. Well, the TL-G12 is the king, except for at 100% P12 max signaling, where the P12 Max finally surpasses it. But the Pastel is giving a good show, being in the upper part of the graph, so it's definitely not a bad position for it to be as well, if you like its aesthetic. So, where does that leave me with these fans in conclusion? Well, if you're looking for the absolute best bang for your buck, and personally I think the fan is ugly, but that's me, and you don't care how the fan looks because it's going to be trapped inside a case, the TL-G12 is the best fan you can buy for its value. Now, as we saw, it isn't peak performance in a lot of graphs. It does pretty well. It does move a good amount of air, but it isn't the quietest for that airflow in a lot of cases, and it's not the highest performing in a lot of cases. So you do need to take that into consideration with this fan. So if I was doing an ultra budget build, I probably would actually use the TL-G12 on my coolers. I probably wouldn't use it as a case fan. But that's me, and you can do whatever you want. I'm just here to present the data. Let's move on to my wrap-up section. Alrighty, and at the end of all my videos, I do like to show off my raw data. This data does belong to me. However, you may use it for your own personal purposes if you would like. So you copy down the data, you put it into Excel, you can generate graphs, prices change, you can create your own value proposition, whatever you like. You are more than welcome to do that. However, if you want to use it in any sort of video, publication, or journal, I do request that you reference me and my channel. I am the one who generated this data. This data does belong to me. Thank you very much. It takes me between 1.5 to 2 hours to get this level of granularity in my data. And as I implement more and improve testing, hopefully in the future, thanks to the help from viewers like you, subscribing and joining me on Patreon, well, the time to do testing will only increase because I'll be doing more testing and hopefully more accurate testing. If you'd like to see me do any test any particular fans in the future, please leave in the comment sections down below. I'll be more than happy to try to get my hands on one and buy it and test it. If you've got constructive criticism for me on how I can improve my videos to make them more pleasant to watch, please leave that in the comment sections down below. I do try to implement that into all future videos. It just may take me a little bit of time because I do have a tendency to buy fans in large groupings and then film in large groupings, such as right now where I'm just actually re-recording all these fans all at once. Thank you for joining on Patreon. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. I hope to see you next time here on Computer Tech and More, and have a great day.